زي
وهم نفسي تحجز شو من ده حساب
نفسي
وانتو حساب مو انتو حساب حجيت على مسلك كير خالي اسك غير قال اسك كير
لا
كانت تطعموا بها
لا
اي راب زي ما حجي
نيو فوكال نيو سيستم اوف فوكال نفسي
انا عدمتو سمعني واب سميت اتي هم زلا فلت له ግን ካሲ ካይደልኒ ሕጂ እንት ያለው بنفسኻ عينك على في جحا لا افك على حجي تقط
لا حجي كرسي عمر ولا نفسي يا تخيني
انسى نفسي اتا اسمعنا
راي بيو
حجي ابت قطم كوي ابت قطم وعي خانديها تسالم سلام قطمي قرب عين خلو حتى خلو بنفسها ويتعجز وسا مستقطم خير الله نفس طرح بنفس طرح يعني عيني هو حجي تقطمي ابتقطمي قرب شيء معوس هذا حاجه
لي عيني تعافن جاي لي سني جاي تغري ببركي
عادم صور سنازير وا اتابي زحلات
وهري لي رأسي سي بركي
عادم حوي
اجري سي
عادم تغلط وكاله اير بقى
نعاتي ماني طعم ما يفلت كان مالك سيكستاي سلي زي ما حدث لزغنا عيد سوقرا
الرئيس كغير مو هذه زي ما مسمعنا طعم لا سمعنا مو حسن غيروا لهم
اوكي جاري غير زلني اون توناليتي اب غورورو تريدي
تونالي تغيير
فايبريشن اي فايبريت هاب الى هراي فايبريت تريدي عيني ازرق نفسي ازرق عيني نبي اجري انت نبي
وانا عبد جها بتم معانا عارف كله
نبي
انا عارف
اجري نبي
دمصو
سوري قصلا سولوني سوري زيد نبي
انا عارف دمصو دابا واتسمعني
نبي
معك دمصو هذا صعب دمصو وي انت تقول حدا في زاز انت عايز مركز كاب زراب عمشو انت عايز زي ما كاب زراب عدي مشو كاب كبتي كم مركز خمسه خلي زراب يقول لك دمص حوي بجا حدا سبر له خدي بتقوم ولدي خبر تحت اصيركم ولا ملبس تحت ايدلني بتقوم زرا يتوقع عجينا واو
مو صريحه مالك
يا يغني لي
ايدلني حمارك بلوفو
بجا سلازدي بتقوم ولدي خمسات حوري سورس اغي يا حته واه
What are we saying to ourselves? What are our thoughts or cognitions? And how are we feeling emotionally? And those are the data points that they are having to glean from their mind-body system in order to get this number. And it's helping them to do that. So I encourage people to do that at least 3 times a day.
Okay.
For at least the first week.
So this is 3 data points, it sounds like.
Exactly.
The emotional state, the physiological state,
Yes.
And then what was
the cognitive state, the thoughts.
Are they all equal? Or does it depend on the individual in terms of...
Excellent question.
Okay.
It is very subjective.
Okay.
So some folks will manifest very physiologically their emotional state and their distress. For instance, I can feel things very, very viscerally in my chest. When I feel anxious, it goes right to my chest, and I know I feel it before I even think it.
Okay.
Now, there are other folks who are so cut off from their body that they feel it or they experience it more intellectually. They start ruminating or thinking over and over again. And for others, they'll just kind of feel overwhelmed with an emotion.
Okay.
So it really depends on you. And it's okay. All of these are data points to get the information that we need. And it doesn't matter which one we really access first. We just want to know how they all
What's
work.
the overall barometer? What's
That's
the
right.
overall reading for me at this moment? Good. Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk about self-confidence, which is so important. I think you hinted at this a little bit already. Is self-confidence teachable? We've all heard about workshops where folks in one workshop or one book, you read a book, you're going to be self-confident. Or is it Tony Robbins?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Some of that stuff, where
Yes.
I'm not dismissing that stuff isn't helpful. But what's your thoughts about self-confidence and how it relates to emotional intelligence, and can we improve our self-confidence?
Yes. So self-confidence is another one of the competencies. It's under the self-awareness domain.
Okay.
And self-confidence is essential because self-confidence is about having a sense of your own self-value and self-worth. When we don't feel like we have self-worth or self-value, we cannot step into ourselves and step into a situation where we can initiate and assert who we are and what we need.
Okay.
And when we can't do that, we can't own our experience. And then when we have some kind of setback, which we keep saying is inevitably going to happen, people can't recover. Now, I want to help people have realistic self-confidence because there's a problem with people who are overly self-confident because that can get in their way too. That's narcissism, that's grandiosity, and oftentimes I'm sure you've experienced folks who are so self-confident that
arrogance.
It's arrogance, exactly. And so I'm not talking about that at all.
Right.
I'm talking about actually just honoring who we are and our sense of self. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
I like to use the example of training a puppy. If you ever had a puppy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I have
a very challenging
Yes.
training situation, but...
That's right. So we'll use this as an example. When potty training a puppy, we find a place where the puppy is supposed to go to the bathroom. It could be the newspaper in the garage or a certain area in the backyard. Now, the worst thing that you can do when you're trying to train a puppy is when you catch it in the act of doing what it's supposed to do, which is go to the bathroom, and then you berate it and yell at it. So you catch the dog going to the bathroom where it's not supposed to go, even though it doesn't know any better. It's just a little speck of dust whizzing through the universe doing the best it can with whatever it's got. We yell, "No, you're a bad dog, bad." This is what happens to the dog. It feels scared and confused. And if anything, it's going to think that going to the bathroom is a bad thing. You don't want puppies thinking going to the bathroom is a bad thing. So what we want to do in this situation is we want to capture the dog doing what it's supposed to be doing where it's not supposed to be doing it. And then, this may sound a little weird, but you then pick it up and bring it where it's supposed to be.
The dog.
That's right. Yeah, that's right, the dog. Preferably in the act.
Okay.
Put it where it's supposed to be. And then we praise it. We tell it how good it is for doing what it's supposed to be doing where it's supposed to be doing it. And I tell people that we have to treat ourselves the same way. We are going to make mistakes. We are going to fall off tasks. We are going to be confused in the world. And that's totally okay. What we need to do when we catch ourselves in the act of it is to bring ourselves back to our focus and to do it as compassionately, as gently as possible. Because when we have an internalized sense that we can treat ourselves with that kind of compassion, we can tolerate anything.
Right.
When we have this internal critical sense that we have to be perfect, we are basically our own worst enemy. And it takes away our ability to be the assertive person that we need to be in the world.
So not being self-critical is very important.
That's right. And avoiding perfectionism. As a recovering perfectionist myself, we need to obliterate perfectionism from our world. It doesn't actually help us. It's problematic.
Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about empathy building.
Yes.
And this is another one of those myths, I think, out there that either you have it or you don't have empathy. And some folks, I hear the argument, some folks have no insight. They're very narcissistic or self-centered or self-serving. How can one learn to have more empathy with others?
Yes.
Seems very tough.
It is tough. Empathy, I think, is one of the more difficult things to teach to folks, although it's absolutely teachable.
Okay.
first let's define what empathy
Yeah.
is. Empathy is the ability to notice and have concern about others' needs, feelings, and concerns.
Okay.
So it's really being able to step inside someone else's shoes and be interested and concerned about what that experience is like. People forget about the interest and concern that comes with empathy. They just think, oh, it's like knowing how you feel. And that's a part of it, but it's also being interested and concerned. As a manager, we need to be able to be interested and concerned in our employees, because the more information we get from our employees about what's going on for them, the more we're able to help them become as good of an employee as they can be. When they don't trust us and they feel like they have to hide from us, and they don't feel like we're going to be sympathetic or empathetic to them, then we won't get the data that we need. So the way that we teach it is, number one, we make it very clear to folks how important it is, because they have to buy into the fact that being empathic is actually an effective tool for behavioral change in the employees that we have, and also across, among our peers. What I like to do is I like to have people sit and share a challenge. So I'll break folks up into pairs.
Okay.
And I'll say, share a challenge that you're having at work with another partner right here, and it'll be confidential between the two of you. What I want the person who's listening to do is to just listen. No speaking. You can give a nonverbal, smile or nod of the head.
I'm doing.
That's right. Exactly. You're doing a very nice job. But I want you to just listen and be present. And you do this. I literally do it for 1 minute. I set a timer and I do it for 1 minute. And it is amazing how powerful it is when it's over, that these folks sat for 1 minute just listening. What it was like for the listener to listen, and what it was like as the person who was speaking to be listened to, to not be interrupted. And it shifts something for some folks. Just this one time, of course, they need a lot of practice, but this one time opens their eyes to how amazing it feels to have someone's true attention right there. To not feel like they're going to say, oh, well, that's just like me, or that reminds me of last week when I went to this. It's giving someone really their focus and attention, and how powerful it is, and how connecting it is, and how much you can really learn from the person from just being present.
Exactly. So listening can be more powerful than speaking.
Absolutely.
For sure. And I think we always minimize the listening part of communication.
Yes.
Well, listening is 10%, and then the other 90% I have to be verbalizing all the time. And having that balance of speaking and listening at the same time. Actually, you mentioned managers and employees. One of the things that we know from motivational studies is that if managers are truly checking in with their employees and knowing their lives, not just what they're doing with their job, but how their kids are doing. How's grandma?
Yes.
How's the car that broke last week?
Yes.
That kind of thing. And really sincerely being interested and concerned about your employees' lives, their whole lives, really makes a difference in terms of employee motivation. So that a practical example of how emotional intelligence can affect productivity.
That's right.
Let's talk about the role of communication with emotional intelligence. What's your thoughts about? We talked a little bit about listening already. Anything else about communication that you want to address?
Well, with communication, it's a very good thing to address, because 2/3 of this is a Newsweek study that I recall reading. They did a poll, and 2/3 of employees say that communication is the number one problem in their workplace. Communication with their management and management with employees is the number one complaint among U.S. employees.
Wow.
So communication is essential for folks, and that's how we get things done, is communication. And what I like to teach is the difference between a dialogue and a debate, which for a lot of folks, I think they really don't grasp. Most of the time when people are trying to communicate with one another, they're trying to prove their point. And we think that by proving our point, then we get respect, because, hey, I made my point. But actually what most people are interested in is a dialogue. And I'll try to give you maybe a sense of what the difference is between the two. Okay. In a debate, we're trying to win our argument. We have a paradigm that's set up, and the paradigm is this. There's a right or wrong. I'm right, you're wrong.
Right.
I'm going to prove that I'm right, and I'm going to prove that you are wrong. In a dialogue, we focus on a similar and different paradigm, where I have a different perspective from you, and I'm going to try to share my perspective, and I really want to understand what your perspective is.
Exactly.
Because in a dialogue, we can actually learn some solution that we never could have imagined could have been present if we were just fighting for our one point of view.
Exactly. It seems like with dialogue, it's more of an exploration. It's more of an adventure.
That's right.
Whereas with debate, it's kind of a hollow victory.
It can be, that's right.
Where there's so much more learning and understanding that can come through a dialogue process. Mitchell, I want to thank you so much for this very invigorating conversation about emotional intelligence. I wish we had some more time. Maybe you can come back sometime and we can explore some of these 18, 19 competencies.
Yeah, that's right. I'd love to come in. It's a lot of
with
fun.
emotional intelligence. Let me go ahead and provide some contact information for Mitchell. His website is www.mindbodyintelligence.com, and his email is adler@mindbodyintelligence.com, and his phone number is 530-219-5985. And next time, we're going to be talking about toxic coworkers. So today's show was a really good foundation